Welcome to the Town and Country Podcast, Two Churches, One Ministry. I am your host, Jonathan Illian, and once again, we are blessed by the presence of our two resident experts in all things theological, the smart guys of the church. We have Pastor Kevin Richter, who is pastor at St. John's Lutheran in Rhinebeck, Iowa. Hello, sir.
Howdy, howdy.
And we also have Pastor Gerald Kapanka, who is the senior pastor at Immanuel Lutheran Church. Hello, sir.
Hey, John.
And we are continuing the process of looking at the Psalms, and today we're going to be discussing Psalm 127, which is a Psalm of Solomon. It's a short psalm, but there's lots of wisdom in there in such a short collection of verses. So, Pastor Kevin, could you start us off on this one for us?
Yeah, I'm just going to start by reading it. So, of course, in the Hebrew, the subscript is included, a song of ascents of Solomon. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved sleep. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, and the fruit of the womb a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate. And so, really, this is a wisdom psalm in the categories. It's teaching us how to live wisely according to God's word. It is written by Solomon, which certainly has some impact for the words that are said. So we start with just kind of the placement of the psalm. It's in book 5, which is the return from exile in the story of Israel, and especially 121 to 132 are these 12 psalms of ascent. And the idea is from Babylon to Jerusalem, you're literally going back up in elevation. Yeah. And so you're ascending back uphill to go back to Jerusalem to worship God. And of course, what are they going to do when they get back to Jerusalem? Rebuild the temple, right? And so, and of course, if you know Nehemiah and some of the books around building the temple, this was not an easy task. They had enemies constantly opposing them. At one point, they're literally working with tools in one hand and weapons in the other to protect themselves from ambush. And so if you just take these first couple verses as the view of Solomon and this idea that unless the Lord builds the house, well, the house he's talking about is the temple. They're going back to Jerusalem to build the house of God. But unless God builds it, it's built in vain. If we just go back and try to do it by our own power for our own reasons, it's not going to matter. But this is God sending his people, equipping them, giving them everything they need in order to build his house. And the same way, they got watchmen standing up on the wall protecting those who are building the house. But if they're just standing up there watching for their own sake, it's in vain. God is allowing the watchmen to warn the other people to keep them safe. Really, God is protecting them from ambush and from all these other things while the house is being built. And so, this is a very contextual psalm, and yet Solomon is wise enough in his wisdom to just use generic terms. It's just the house, just the watchman.
And it's so contemporary for today because
Yes.
you could take verse 1 and apply it to absolutely our culture today, where we are trying to build our retirement, we're trying to build our homes, we're trying to build our life, we're trying to do it ourselves, but yet we have left off so often the most important ingredient.
Yes, and so, the house can mean the temple, the house could mean our church today, but the house can just mean your household where you dwell.
Right.
A house is also synonymous for family, and that's where we're going to pull in the second part of the psalm. But this idea that anything we try to do for our own power, for our own purpose, is going to end up empty and meaningless. But God equipping us to do it, God giving us that purpose to do this work, then gives it its meaning and its fulfillment. And so really, this is a psalm about how do we go about living our daily life, doing the good works God has prepared for us to do in a way that is honorable and faithful to him, but still diligent and faithful in what we have been called to do.
And I think in verse 2 is where he says, this is what happens when you don't do it, as it begins off, it is in vain with you rise up early, you go to rest, if you're anxious on all you're going to do. So if you're not doing it with the idea that this is God who's building it, this is what your life is going to look like.
Yeah, if it was truly on my shoulders to shepherd a church and raise a family, I would never sleep. I would stay up late. I'd get up early. I'd be anxious all the time because I would always have to make sure I'm doing good enough.
You're
And
describing the first 20 years of my ministry.
yeah, and how many of us chasing after the American dream of making it big in capitalism very rarely sleep. You pour your life away at work. You try to spend every moment you're not at work with your family, trying to be enough for them. And it's anxious. It's exhausting. It's
But
draining.
isn't that what's expected? I mean, we honor those people who say, well, I only got 4 hours sleep last night because I was working on this project or that event or this thing. I mean, we lift that up as somehow a virtue when
Ye-
we do that in
ye-
our culture.
Oh, yes. Not only do we do it in the working world amongst each other, we have passed it on to our children
Yeah.
because busyness is success. The
Well-
more activities I throw them in, the more things I put, if they're in a travel team and a rec team and this school team, well, now they're set up to be successful the rest of their
Yeah.
life because look at all the things they're doing. And you're teaching your children it's not okay to ever relax. You got to go, go, go. You got to work for what you want. You got to do this. And never once do we teach them, God has given you this, God is working in this, or teaching them that it's okay to not do all those things because God's got other meaning for your
Good thing
life.
us clergy don't have that problem.
Right. Yeah, we never overwork,
And take
never
pride in how many hours we spend on a project.
or anxious about all the things we have
Yeah.
to fix. Yeah, And so this is just human nature, and it's a constant wrestle that every single person wrestles with. How do I do the work God has given me to do? Because that's important too. We can't just sit like bumps on a log and say, oh, God's going to do it all for me. Like, no, he has called you into these vocations. He has given you this work to do. It's good work. It's holy work. Get to it. But at the same time, I do it because it's God's work and he's the one doing it through me. And he's the one that will make it not in vain, but truly build the house through my hands. He's the one that will keep me safe, even as I'm alert and aware of what's going on around me.
And because it's God's work, it's not dependent upon me. If I don't get it done, if I am not skilled enough to complete it or to do it the way it is, it doesn't diminish the project that God has designed and built.
No, in fact, it's the exact opposite. When God lets us fail, it's equipping us for the future.
Yeah.
He's working through our failures just as much as our successes, because in those struggles, in those times when we come up short, he's teaching us to depend on him, but also giving us life skills for the next time this happens. We see this out in the wilderness. God's leading the Israelites and they're grumbling about water. And then they turn the next corner after he breaks open the water in the rock. And what's there is this giant oasis of water with 72 palm trees. It's like, if you'd have just waited one more day, I had all this water here for you, And the next time they're thirsty, do they remember that? Nope. Should they? Yes. And so it's like, okay, God, you're going to provide for me, but you're also trying to teach me, trust me, follow me, let me do the work, And so this wisdom is to do the work God has given you, but trust it's God doing it, and it's for his purpose and his value, and he's the one equipping you to do it. And that way, whether you succeed, you give him the glory. If you fail, you still give him the glory because he's teaching you, he's growing you, he's shaping and transforming you.
And when you do that, just to wrap up that final, the last line of verse 2 is when we're able to kind of acknowledge our place in this whole process. It is the Lord who gives his beloved sleep.
Right.
When you rest in the Lord, knowing that it's his work, that I've done what I can today, that whether success or failure, it is the Lord's work, I can sleep at peace.
I think it was Luther who said, like, the life of the Christian is you do your best, the very best you can do, honoring God and living with him all day long. At the end of the day, you look back and you admit all the places you fell short, and you confess all your sins where you were not good enough. You know you're forgiven, and you go to sleep at peace, and you wake up the next day and you do it again.
Yeah.
And you do this for the rest of your life until you die. And on one hand, that seems like such an endless, monotonous cycle. On the other hand, what a beautiful blessing it is to have the freedom to do the best of your ability and to do the work God has given you to do. But at the end of the day, not have the stress of, was it enough? Was this good? Was there meaning to it? Because God's automatically giving it that meaning and value. And so, we can just go to sleep at peace. I mean, go read Psalm 4. At the end of that, I will both lie down and sleep in peace, David said, even after he's just complained about everything going wrong, and the reason is because God's in control. He's got this. And so then when you jump to the next part, this switch from what you're doing, your work, you're anxious, your toil, your lack of sleep, all of a sudden you switch to children. And for some people, especially in our modern context, it probably feels disjointed. Like, you're talking about my work and now you're talking about my children. And trust me, I have quoted this psalm back to God when my children are up all night and will not let me sleep. And I say, okay, God, you give your beloved sleep, and children are a blessing, but it's these blessings that are keeping me from sleeping right now,
What a great reality.
And, but the idea is back to that first verse, building the house.
Yeah.
And the house, whether it's the temple, the house could also be the nation, or the house could be your individual family unit. But any of them only grow and keep going because of the next generation, right? We build the temple to worship God, but also to raise our children worshiping God in that, temple to come. We build a nation, but you don't have a nation if you don't have the next generation. You build a house, but your house doesn't last if you don't have children. And so it's very clear that me building this house and watching over it, protecting it, the whole purpose of that is to give it to the next generation.
And he uses that in the words, are a heritage from the Lord.
Right.
Yeah.
And also we can tie this back to the fourth commandment. It's the only commandment that has the blessing.
Yeah.
If you honor father and mother, it will go well with you in the land for a long time. This is how you're going to continue to prosper and stick around for generations to come, is by building a house where the parents raise the children and teach them the faith. And so, yes, children are a heritage, the fruit of the reward, a fruit of the womb, a reward. And this idea of like arrows in a warrior's hand, like, what do you do with arrows? You shoot them out, right?
Yeah.
With a purpose. You don't just shoot blindly. You don't just throw them out there.
You haven't seen me shoot.
Yeah. You shoot with a purpose, And what do you do with your children? You raise them and prepare them to send them out with purpose. Why? So that they can go about the work they're meant to do, knowing it's God's who working through them. It goes right back to verses 1 and 2. You are doing this in order to raise your children so that they go out. Also, this idea that children are a reward, sure, but they're a ton of work. The gift God gives us comes with so much responsibility of raising them, feeding them, keeping them alive, teaching them. And then someday when they're full-blown working adults and all these things, they're going to take care of us, and they're going to be a reward and inheritance back to us because we have raised them in that way. And so they are a arrow for a later day. We're going to send them out knowing they will bring back reward for us. And that's not why you have children, because I get something out of it someday, but it is this natural, I take care of them, they take care of me type of style.
We see a lot of that, especially in the last few years, as the baby boomers are getting older and are now no longer able to take care of themselves like they used to. Their children are going to have to take that role of being almost the parent to their parents.
Yes.
And there's a lot of pushback to that. I mean,
Yes.
there's a lot of people saying, I didn't plan on spending my savings on taking care of mom and dad, or what a burden it is to, it's much easier just to put them in a care facility or let somebody else do that.
There's also just as much pushback from the parents not wanting the kids to take care
that
of
works
them,
both ways. Yeah.
because it's a lack of independence, and it's this idea of I'm still mom and dad.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, no, you're not. Your time of raising me is over. Now it's my time to care for you. And that has to be associated both ways, that I'm willing to take on that burden. You did the burden of raising me. Now I'm willing to take on the burden of caring and loving for you. But also, you raised me to be able to be the adult who now can make decisions and care for you. And it's a love and mutual respect. And we have to build that house together in a way that this works that way.
So it begins at the beginning, not at the end.
Right. Yeah, you can't raise your children, as a completely independent, you do absolutely nothing for me your entire life, and then say, well, they don't do anything for me. No, that's the point. You include them in everything you do from early on, so that when you need them, you can include them in that too. You also show them that you struggle as a young adult, to show them, hey, in my struggles as an old adult, I still need you, and vice versa, and build this mutual relationship. But it's then when you get to verse 5, this also, you can take back to the original command, be fruitful and multiply. The idea is to have children and have lots of them, and we see this, blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. It's not just like, I'll take 2 arrows out hunting and I know I've got 2 shots and that's all I need. No, like, I'm going to take a whole bunch of arrows so that if I keep missing, I've got more to shoot.
So if 3 of my kids don't behave, as long as I got 3 more that are going to take care of me. So the odds are in my favor.
I'm in big trouble. I only have 2. So.
But it's this idea that if we want to build the house for the generations to come, we want to populate and be fruitful. Now, does that mean it's a sin to only have 2 kids?
That's where I was going to go with
No,
that.
of course not. Like, this is not an idea that more kids is more faithful. The idea is we don't want to have 1 kid and stop and say, okay, I got my kid, God, I don't want any more.
And the rationale behind that is because they cost too much. They take too much time. I want to spend more money on me and myself.
Yes. And if I only have one kid, I can save up enough money to take care of myself. I don't need my kids to take care of me. Like you're disrupting the entire order God has designed for the family. So, if people are only able to biologically have one children and that's it, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the gift God has given them. They have their child. If you don't have any children, some people are not able to have any children. Again, that's the work God has prepared for you to do. In other ways, you impact other family members, you impact other people in your community, you build relationships with other people who can take care of you and help you. You have a church family full of people. So this is not the idea that like you have to have a bunch of kids to be faithful. This is the idea that God did give us the command to be fruitful and multiply, to have children, to raise that next generation, to raise them in the faith. And that is part of the work he has given us to do. And if you want to build that house according to God's way, not according to your way, you're just faithful to him. You let him lead that, whatever that looks like, whether that's 0 children or 10 children, you let God lead the work you're doing.
Yeah, there's a movement that has come along since I've been a pastor. When we were in seminary, there wasn't a lot of discussion about how many children should a pastor and his wife have. It just wasn't even a consideration. I hear a lot of the young pastors coming out or the seminarians talking about the fact that having a large family is really what's expected and what's almost an obligation, that you got to start having children the moment you're married, and you don't stop until you're physically not able to do it anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, we can turn children into an idol, and the idea that this is our best church growth model of just have more kids is grossly sinful, because yes, God promised Abraham more offspring than the sand on the shores, but from the very beginning he also promised the Gentiles will be brought into that, right? You'll be a blessing to all nations. And so just because we're not having biological children does not mean we're not a blessing to those around us, that we can't grow the church without having children. But the idea is, if you have the gift and the means and the ability to have more children, and you just stop and say, no, that's not our plan, okay, again, I'm not even going to say that's sinful. I'm just going to ask you to reflect on that. Why is it? Why are you intentionally stopping that? And you need to consider that. Is that
Are you denying yourself the opportunity for the blessings that come through more children? So
Yes.
it's really, you're limiting your own ability to receive from God.
And is this your own anxious toil of, I won't be able to afford college for all of them. I won't be able to go on the vacations I want to go to. I won't be able to have this car I want because I'll need a minivan with 4 car seats instead of an SUV with 2. Like what is it that's preventing you from doing that? And having that conversation, is it faithful to God that, okay, my wife's health is in danger and I'm not going to have more children for that. That's an honorable thing versus
exactly.
I don't want to pay for college for 4 kids, so I'm only going to have 2. That may not be.
So we're not going to guilt, the couple who have some fertility issues, or the couple, the woman who says, I can't have any more biologically or because of health issues. That's not what this is talking about, and somehow making you feel bad because of it.
Absolutely not. And even to those couples that want children so bad and cannot have them, that's a place where there's a lot of hurt and resentment already, and it's a place to see God as a not fair God, not a giving God, But really, you have to ask, what is the house he's asking you to build? If this is off the table and he has made that clear that that's not available, how do you still build your house with other people? And one of the ways is the church family. Jesus tells his disciples, everything you gave up for me, you will get back tenfold. And yes, part of that is talking about the new heaven and new earth, but I think part of that's talking about this life. When you come to church, you're part of a family that has dozens and dozens of children. You're part of other families' lives. You're part of these people's lives. And maybe God is asking you to build that house in that way rather than this way. And so how do I not anxious and toil over this, that if I don't have children, I'm less of a mom or a woman, I'm less of a man. No, that's not anxious toil we should stay up and lose sleep over either.
Right.
God is building my house through me, and if he's removed that option, I will be faithful and serve him and build my house in what other opportunities he gives me. There's no guilt or shame in that. Just as much as the family that has 10 kids and it seems like their life is complete and utter chaos, I'm not going to shame or judge them either, because this is the life God has given them. They're raising those children. And so yes, this is just simply saying God has given us a command to have the next generation. If that's part of your house that he has given you to build, great, do it. If it's not, build the house he's asking you to build.
I have to tell you, Kevin, I tremendous respect for you, and as the Psalms guy and of our little team here, every time you start to exegete a psalm and kind of explain to me, because I've read Psalm 127, and it always seemed like there was a like you said, a shift between verses 2 and verses 3 that I never really understood. And you've brought it home so clearly in terms of the role of the children in terms of building that house that God's called us to, and tied those two pieces of the psalm together. That makes sense to me, and I want to say thank you for that.
Yeah. So ultimately, the wisdom of this psalm is do the work God has given you to do. And whatever that what work looks like, whether that's a vocation of a husband or wife, or if you're not married the rest of your life, you have other vocations. If that's a vocation of mother or father, or you don't have children, there's other vocations. What ways is God asking you to build your house, watch over and protect what he's building in your life that is faithful to him, not on your shoulders, and yet you're actively participating in the work he has given you to do. And that's how you sleep and go to sleep at peace at night. And the next generation, whether it's your biological children, adopted, fostered children, church family children, nieces, nephews, whoever it may be, as you prepare them for that next generation, you are doing the work God has given you to do. That is a blessing. That is his work he's accomplishing through you. And these go hand in hand. And it's not easy. It's a responsibility. It's work, but it's joyful. It's a noble task. It's God's work through you.
And just to kind of tie together this podcast with our last one where we talked about God preserving and working through the vocations of people. It's exactly what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah. And so, what vocations, which is mostly, one of the coolest things I discovered with Luther's idea of vocation is it's always tied to someone else.
Yeah.
A vocation is just simply a relationship. What relationships has God given you?
And that's how he works his preservation power through that vocation, that
Right.
relationship. Yeah.
And it also just shows the community aspect. God never wanted us to be hermits, to live in a cabin out in the woods all by ourselves. As much as I dream about that someday.
Just say, that's your dream.
But it's not true. I would not be doing the work God has given me to do if I just went and lived in a monastery and only cared about myself, or went out in a cabin in the woods and talked to nobody ever again, because we are meant to be in community. We are meant to be in relationship. These are the vocations where he is asking us to do his work that is both good for us and good for them. And he is the one doing that work through us. He's prepared those good works for us. We simply get to do them to the best of our ability, know when we fail we're forgiven, go to sleep in peace, and watch the next generation try to do the same.
So now you understand, folks, why I say that we have two resident experts on all things theological. There they are. So thank you very much for bringing this very short psalm back into focus. I think that people have really got some good information there. So thank you very much, both of you, for your time today. And thank you all for joining us for the Town and Country Podcast, Two Churches, One Ministry. Thanks goes out to our audio engineer, Mr. Dave Kaler. And once again, we want to thank Pastor Kevin and Pastor Kapanka. I am your host, Jonathan Ilian, and we invite you to come back again next time as we bring you the next installment of the Town and Country Podcast. Thanks again, and have a great week.